Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. I am talking today about the importance of the state of segmentation. Joining me to discuss it, Garrett Weber. He's the Field CTO with the Akamai Enterprise Security Group. Garrett, thanks so much for making time to speak with me today.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate it. Happy to be here.
So let's start here. I know you recently conducted the Segmentation Impact Study for 2025. What was your objective?
I think what we were trying to do was highlight the drivers, benefits, and the barriers that are really shaping the adoption of segmentation and really understanding the shift from segmentation to micro-segmentation and how organizations are using it to more effectively deal with lateral movement, which is quite an overlooked part of the attacker kill chain and arguably the most impactful point when an attacker can leverage access to multiple systems and kind of broaden the scope of the attack. And what we kind of learned from it as we went through this is many organizations, about 90%, report using some sort of segmentation. And we're seeing this growing amount of 35% plus that have implemented micro-segmentation. So we were trying to understand how are those organizations making that shift and leveraging micro-segmentation to bolster their security posture.
So, what further did you learn? And more important, what surprised you?
I would say two things that we really learned and surprised us from this. One is that for organizations leveraging microsegmentation for breach containment, they were able to contain breaches 33% faster by using microsegmentation solution as part of that incident response process. And when you think about that, that could be hours, could be days in some situations that they're saving in that breach containment kind of response mode. The reason that occurs is because they're able to control that lateral movement in the spread of the malware and the unauthorized access and shrink that blast radius. So instead of dealing with potentially hundreds or thousands of systems that have been breached from the attacker moving around the environment, now you may be dealing with a dozen or five. And it just makes it easier to contain that breach faster. The second thing we learned, which I know we'll talk more about, is that cyber insurers are now taking microsegmentation into account when they're issuing premiums, and organizations leveraging the microsegmentation in that discussion with the cyber insurers are seeing flat or decreases in their premiums year over year.
Well, there's so much to dive into here. Let me just start here. Given what you've learned, how would you describe today's state of segmentation?
I'd say a lot of organizations have struggled with segmentation in the past, and there's scar tissue associated with that today. But as we're seeing, many of them are reevaluating those strategies and they're focusing on microsegmentation versus traditional segmentation. Now, the reason they're doing this is it's being driven by compliance regulations, the various government agencies, or if you just look at the postmortems from some of these breaches that have occurred, better segmentation is always one of the top 2 or 3 recommendations in those postmortems. So we're seeing organizations switch that focus and rethink that strategy around segmentation. And as they're switching that focus, they're saying, okay, let's prioritize our top 10, top 15 applications that we need to protect that are critical to keeping the business running. And let's understand how can we reduce the attack surface of commonly abused ports and services to ensure that if an attacker gets in the environment, they can only move so far if they can get anywhere. So I think we're seeing that big shift and a big focus on like prioritization for where should we execute on microsegmentation within the environment.
So, Garrett, to dive into some of your findings a bit, how would you say forward looking enterprises today are leveraging micro-segmentation in their defenses?
Yeah, I think if we look at like the top 20% that I'd say are forward-looking enterprises leveraging microsegmentation, the first thing is it's not just a network security tool. It's not just meant for segmentation in the environment. It's meant to be paired with your threat hunting capabilities and extended into your SOC teams to give them the visibility of what's going on in the environment and the opportunity to use the microsegmentation solution as a control point, as it should be. And it's easier to implement policy in today's microsegmentation solutions to take an action in an environment than it was previously when we were doing this with like traditional firewalls in the data center. So as we're seeing those organizations start to shift that focus and say, okay, we're going to make this a cybersecurity tool, not just a network security tool, they're seeing fewer systems being compromised, lower recovery costs, faster recovery from breaches, and they're getting all those benefits just by simply deploying the right tool for the right reasons within the environment.
To follow another thread that you pulled, how are cyber insurance companies looking upon customers today who leverage segmentation?
Yeah, I found this super interesting because when we think of auditors and insurers, we traditionally think they're a little behind the curve on what they're doing in their world. But what we actually found is auditors and insurers have caught on to the need to control lateral movement as an effective way to limit the impact of a breach and respond faster when a breach does occur in the environment. So those insurers are factoring in segmentation maturity into that premium pricing and claims processing and rewarding those with stronger containment capabilities because they're leveraging microsegmentation. So what we've seen across our customers is many of them have noted that they have flat year over year premiums or lower premiums year over year once they implemented microsegmentation. And it's really just being driven by that one change. It wasn't a collective change of all the tooling and processes within the environment. It was the implementation of something that can control the blast radius of a breach. And that's improved the security posture, and the auditors and the insurers are rewarding them for it.
Now, Gary, you've told me prior that segmentation is easier to implement today. How is that?
Yeah, I think it's because the vendors in this space like Akamai have invested a lot of time in understanding what are the right workflows and what is the right user experience for implementing microsegmentation or segmentation at scale within an environment. So it used to be that we would implement segmentation using firewalls and VLANs, and it was really kind of complicated and clunky, and app owners didn't understand how their applications were communicating. So rules were never accurate. We were constantly in this state of like rolling back rules because we broke something within the environment. And as we've shifted to microsegmentation, the leading part of any microsegmentation effort is visibility. Let's understand the dependencies of those applications. Let's map all that out for the customer so that we can build the appropriate policy for them. And then when you get to the policy building, the workflows are built to recommend the appropriate policy for you. So there's no longer this, hey, we need to go figure out how this application communicates, but the guy who built it doesn't work here anymore. The documentation is 10 years old. Things have changed. We don't know the new core services it communicates to. You can map all that out and get the right recommended policy for you in today's solutions, which makes it easier to move forward with implementing segmentation.
Now, talk to me a bit about Akamai. How are you leveraging AI to enhance your own segmentation solutions?
Yeah, AI is a huge part of what we're building into our microsegmentation solution. So the first area where we use it is for identifying what are the systems in your environment, because no one has an accurate inventory today. That's always the first challenge that everyone has. So by taking the visibility that we collect, we can look at the ports, the processes, some other metadata about the systems within the environment and start to identify what they are and then tag them appropriately. Say, this is a database server, this is a print server, this is an IoT device, this is an endpoint, etc. That helps us get some speed built into the beginning part of the implementation so that we can help that customer build their inventory and start mapping those dependencies. The second part that we're using AI today is around that policy building piece. So we have found that we can leverage AI to not only give you more accurate policy recommendations, but also give you confidence scoring for how ready that policy is to be moved into enforcement mode. Because all those workflows should go through a kind of building phase where you draft the policy, you monitor it for a bit, and then you move to enforcement. In the last 5-7 years of us doing this, everyone freezes at that point of enforcement because there's a lack of confidence. What might occur is always the concern. By leveraging AI, we can give them a confidence score and say things like, we haven't seen a new flow hit this policy in the last 10 days. We're pretty confident. We're 90% confident this can move into enforcement. So using that just gives the customer a comfort level that policy is ready to be moved into enforcement and they're ready to go. And then lastly, the third area is around just the user experience in the interface itself. So lots of chatbots so that you don't have to do lots of clicking and filtering. And that means that users of different levels can come into the user interface and interact with the system. You can have an app owner who's never seen the UI before come in, go to the chatbot and say, show me all the blocked connections from the last 48 hours for my CRM application, just using natural language processing through the chatbot and get that data back. So it just enhances the user experience for everyone involved.
Yeah, we've covered a lot here in a short period of time. Where can our listeners go to learn even more about the state of segmentation and, of course, Akamai?
Yeah, so for anyone interested in learning more about the state of segmentation, we do encourage you to access our Segmentation Impact Study, which is out on the Akamai website. And for just a broader view of Akamai's full suite of products and solutions, we do recommend that you visit our kind of main landing page there at akamai.com.
Excellent, Garrett. I appreciate your time and insight. Thanks so much for taking time to speak with me.
Thanks, Tom.
Again, the topic has been the state of segmentation. You've just heard from Garrett Weber with Akamai. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you so much for your time and your attention today.